You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Inside Commerce podcast, sponsored by Centra and Grabber. It's just me today as James is busy, but I'm joined by Philipp, who I recently had the pleasure of running a panel with at the Ecom Expo, and someone that I've been really interested by some of the recent changes that his brand are going through, which we'll touch on in today's episode. But to kick things off, Philipp, can you give us a bit of an intro to you, your background, and also Luca Faloni?
Yeah, so I'm Philipp, and thanks, Paul, for the invitation to the podcast. I am the head of growth at Luca Faloni, overseeing basically everything digital. Have joined the brand in 2020, so now it's 4.5 years. And Luca Faloni is a Italian premium menswear brand. We focus on high quality, made in Italy products, timeless elegance, things that don't go out of fashion, always look nice, and are around for a long time. Brand has been founded by Luca Faloni in 2014. And since then, we're strict D2C brand. We are not going through any wholesale channels, but we do have our own retail stores and obviously our own e-commerce side. Retail counts now at 10 stores globally. The majority Europe, Milan, obviously, 3 times in London. Paris now recently opened as the last one that we have. Zurich, Munich, New York, Miami, and the US.
Lovely. And I've definitely seen some of those stores firsthand when I've been traveling. And we'll come on to that a little bit later on. So I guess the biggest topic, based on our recent discussions, is replatforming and your decision to move to Centra recently, which I think has attracted a lot of interest in the industry. And I've seen quite a few people talking about it. Can you just talk us through kind of what made you go down the Centra route and also how you approached the kind of end-to-end tech stack?
Yeah. So in the end, we grew a lot internationally. So we needed to make a decision at some point and at the same time, our Shopify theme became a little bit stuck. So we anyway needed to redo the whole front end or the whole website, right? And then there was the discussion, okay, should we stay on Shopify? Should we go into another platform? Should we split the Shopify into multiple instances, catering for the regions to have the ability, to process payments locally, to have local SEO optimization and everything that basically you want to have? Or do we switch onto a headless platform, headless backbone with a front end that allows us for any freedom of design, that we can cater the basically worldwide online e-commerce, right? Our decision then went to Centra because they exactly built for that, and they're built for fashion in particular, which obviously for us as a fashion brand, doing the first headless project is very interesting, and I think a good partner to scale. At the same time, it gives you basically the full freedom, to swap out and in other solutions, which is great. They have some pre-built plugins. As a payment processor, we use Adyen. If we want to bring another payment processor, we can integrate it, and there's no beyond the integration, there's no extra cost for us. So it allows us, this best of breed solution to approach a best of breed, best of breed selection as we want it, basically, and as we grow, right? So we can adjust, we can swap out single solutions, single SaaS platforms if we want, yeah, and if we are willing to do it. So it gives us this amount of flexibility, and that was one of the key decisions: fashion focus, vertical, scalability, and flexibility, right? And freedom of design. So these were kind of the cornerstones of the valuation. That's why the tech stack around Centra, with Adyen as a payment, as I said, with the Next.js, React as a front end, which gives us all the freedom we want to have. CMS, Storybook CMS, which allows us everything for multi-language, etc. And Voyado as a CRM, which CRM obviously is independent from it, but I mean they integrate well with Centra, so it's a good starting point. They do loyalty as well, which we do. So I think this whole tech stack, I think for us was quite good and allows us now to scale to the next level as a brand.
Greben create digital flagship stores for iconic brands of today and tomorrow. We are the #1 Centra agency in the world, with more than 50 Centra implementations to date. We are also e-commerce design specialists, platform and tech partner agnostic. Try our new e-commerce design subscription. Visit greben.com.
Perfect. And you almost have the whole Swedish mafia, as they're referred to in the industry. You certainly got a few of them.
Some of them we got them, not all of them. We also use other things.
Yeah.
But obviously they go together.
Absolutely. So next question, and we'll come on to the more technical side of this in a second, but one of the, I guess, things that always comes up when I'm talking to people looking at replatforming is from the impact on internal resources and, teams that are, needing to trade the site potentially through a peak period or, other people in the business that have other priorities. How did you manage this through the migration? Like, did you resource it all internally? Did you bring in, extra people? Like, how did you approach the kind of internal deliverables and kind of managing the project?
Yeah. So basically we went on a hybrid approach. We have internal resources that we also trained, obviously, on the new tech stack, on the new systems, on the new frameworks. We got a partner on board to implement and build the website and then also train our internal team. We have an own UX UI designer who basically did the Figma designs for the website. And then we work very closely together with a partner to build the new solution. And then gradually after launch, we took over and now we basically operate it to a large extent ourselves internally. There was a bit the logic behind. So we keep the flexibility and the speed in-house, but obviously there is a transition phase. And I think during that transition phase, it was also crucial to have a partner because otherwise it takes a very long time unless you hire a very skilled, experienced team that has done it before.
So yeah, that makes sense. We've definitely had clients that have gone down that route as well, where even though they've had the engineering resource, as part of the migration, they still outsourced the build. Elements have been done via that internal team, but also the project is like an opportunity for that internal engineering team to learn the platform, understand the platform, etc., and then they take over post-launch. So that makes complete sense. And did you, in terms of like managing the project, like did you manage it internally or did you bring in kind of external project management resources or a product owner or anything like that?
No, this we managed internally. Having the UX designer in-house and having had a very clear picture of what we needed in, let's say, at least in the first wave, right? Also, we believe in, we don't believe in revolution necessarily, but, evolution and step-by-step improvement, because also obviously resources are limited. So you can't do everything at once. And this whole new tech stack this was not only Sentra and the front end, right? We also replaced Klaviyo with Voyado. At the same time, we also did because before we used Shopify POS as well. So we did a new POS. So it was already quite complex. So we wanted to go evolutionary. So we could manage it well in-house. Huh?
Makes sense. And then, so as part of that, so there was no redesign. It was purely, okay, we're going to change the back-end systems. And then based on what you said there, you're then going to continue to iterate on the front end and potentially look at kind of redesigning elements of the site over time.
Yes, exactly. So the approach was the website looked fairly similar to the previous one once we launched. Obviously, we don't use the Shopify checkout anymore, right? We could go on a custom checkout, which, can be beneficial, right? Because then the Shopify checkout, I think, is a great solution, but obviously caters for the full breadth of retail, which is not necessarily what we need for us with our shipping methods, etc. So to be able to custom that was obviously quite beneficial. We did also some design improvements. We did a new typography and these things. We got them directly implemented with the launch of the new website, which was, to be honest, a major change, right? But now we are starting to roll out new features and new designs and changing. So now very soon we should have a new navigation mega menu, etc. So I think now we can go step by step and launch new things and innovate on the solution we have.
Centra is the only commerce platform built exclusively for fashion brands. Over 300 fashion brands run on Centra, including icons like Paul Smith, Jeff, Avenue, and Nudie Jeans. Centra solves business logic challenges for fashion brands like no other platform, and they are on a mission to help you scale up rapidly, globally, across all online and offline channels. Take your fashion brand global, faster, further, stronger today.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Shopify checkout, actually, because as much as I'm a massive fan of the Shopify checkout, and it's obviously super performant, and they've got a team of people focusing on it, and in almost all instances, it's great. But the more luxury brands we've worked with, the more resistance we get around it, I guess, because a lot of these brands, they want to create an end-to-end unique experience. They want to have a bit more control over the flow and actually performance and that kind of, those metrics that most people would look at as part of a checkout process might not necessarily apply, or they might not be the primary focus. So yeah, I feel like I've had that discussion a lot recently. It's interesting that you bring that up. Lovely. So I guess the next topic that I've got here is internationalization and localization. And you mentioned that the site is multi-language, and I mentioned that I've seen the stores in various different places around the world. So can you just talk us through kind of how you approach the international side of things, Luca Faloni?
Yeah, I mean, there is a couple of angles, right? You need to take care, and then you prioritize them as you can, or as is needed. One is obviously, I mean, on the content side, right? There's parts of the world where it's sunny while we are here in winter. So obviously that's one of the things. Do you want to show, in our case, cashmere jumpers to people in Australia in December, or rather linen shirt, right? That's now an option we can fairly easy roll out, right? That's on the one thing. So one is really on the content, to localize the content more. But I mean, there's the lower hanging fruits, which is one is clearly currency, right? I mean, people want to shop and check out and pay in their currency. I think that's probably the first step. We now have, I think, 14 currencies live, if I'm not mistaken. Then the next one is obviously language, right? Especially if you think just of Europe, which is one of our core areas. There is a big countries, France, Germany, and then obviously the surrounding Belgium and, Switzerland, Austria, Italy. That, I mean, people basically search and shop in their own language. Even if it's an international country, let's say the Netherlands, or Sweden, people still, they still search in Swedish. They tend to search in Swedish, although everyone speaks English perfectly and it's all great. But I mean, search in Swedish. So you lose basically out on Google traffic, you lose out on organic traffic, even if you don't do paid ads, because your website is not relevant to them if it's in English, right? So gradually, obviously now we are live in obviously Italian, as we're an Italian brand, German, French, and Spanish. And soon we are rolling out Swedish. We have a store in Stockholm, and Dutch as well. And I think, language-wise, it's important, right, to localize. And even language-wise, English, right? I mean, US English is different to UK English. Small differences, but I think they make they have an impact for sure. And that's also one of the next projects that we do, that we localize the US in terms of pants versus trousers, like the classic thing, gray and gray, A and E, and these little things that you look more like a local brand. Obviously offering local shipment methods, offering local payment methods that you can do with RTN. All these little things, they sum up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, this is a topic that I tend to get dragged into quite a lot, around the kind of when the right time is to invest in like full localization, or like at least translating the core of your website, and kind of how you quantify the value or like justify it. I think the split is usually, as you say, around kind of if you're looking to invest in top of funnel demand and like grow a country from a new customer perspective, then it's usually worthwhile investing on that side. Whereas if you're servicing existing demand and it's a country where a lot of people speak English, it doesn't necessarily make sense. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. You mentioned the kind of local trading side there. So, for example, the weather in 2 months' time in the UK is not going to be great, whereas in Australia it's going to be lovely. I guess for a brand like yours, that has a real impact as well. How do you approach that from an internal perspective? Because I think, again, this is a really interesting topic, partly from a team perspective in terms of resources and how you allocate those resources across different markets, and then also just from a kind of operational perspective. So how do you approach that as a kind of e-commerce?
Yeah, so basically we have divided, well, not by country on the storefront, but by region. Yeah, we have a UK region, North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, to keep it manageable, right? And then it depends really on your setup. If you're huge and have local teams, then you break it down per country, right? Or you even break creatives per country and all these things. This is not something we currently do. But what we will start doing now this season is really to have at least a seasonal calendar for those main regions and change the content accordingly. Right? For example, we offer something which is called Shop by Look, right? And we have them split by seasons naturally. We have summer looks, we have winter looks. Then in Europe, we will show heavy on winter looks, while in Australia, we also add the option of the summer looks, right? Some people still may travel to Europe and still want to buy cashmere. So we still need to push that, but we can have, on the mega menu, we can have a different order. And obviously the first things are clicked first, right? It's quite natural. Yeah. So there we can, we need to be pragmatic and prioritize. Obviously, we could localize much, much more, but at some point you need to, it's an 80-20 approach is probably a good one to start with, right? You get 80% of the results with 20% of the effort rather than the last 20%. Squeeze them out is very difficult, right? And requires then even maybe local presence, local teams. So we take a pragmatic approach there. Yeah.
Completely agree. And I definitely agree with that. The reason I actually brought that up, I was talking to a brand the other day and I've had this discussion a lot. And essentially their approach is UK, they would put a lot of time into kind of thinking about from a brand and trade perspective, which products should be presented via product recommendations, category merchandising, and then same approach to content. And then when it comes to other markets, in a lot of cases, the content will be inherited, so it's not as kind of seasonal or weather dependent. But the product recs and merchandising strategy would be heavily automated. And that brand we're talking about, basically what they watched from me was examples of brands that have hired international trading resources to try and kind of justify or build a bit of a case. But it's interesting because I've definitely had that conversation a bit more over the last few years around the idea of like a core e-commerce team and then maybe someone like solely focused on trading international, either one specific region or international sites. Interesting topic. That could probably be a good episode at some point. So the next question I have, so moving on to kind of channels and kind of services that you're using. So you mentioned at the start, you don't do wholesale, which I think is really interesting. And you don't see too many brands as big as yours that don't have a presence in some of the kind of international kind of retailers, both online and offline. Is that part of your roadmap? And I guess where I was going with this question is, do you intend to use Centra's wholesale offering, which is a big kind of selling point for the platform?
Currently, it's not on the roadmap, and thus the answer is no. Yeah. So we want to focus on the, D2C. We know sometimes wholesale would be maybe an easy way in, but we strongly believe that on the long term, having the direct relationship to the customer is a big advantage.
Makes sense. Really interesting. And you're using C2 for POS, I believe. How are you approaching the omni-channel side of things? Like what kind of services do you provide to your customers at the moment, like currently?
Yeah, so currently we started with endless aisle orders. If we have an item not available in store, we directly order it either to the store or to the customer online, and returns and exchanges of online orders in store. Soon then we'll go live also with a global gift card solution that you can buy in store or online, use in store online, no matter which currency where you bought it. That will go live should go live in Q4, obviously, for the gifting season. And we are currently evaluating, let's say, ship from store and pick up from store and these type of things. We are not live yet, but especially pick up from store, I think is something that is very interesting. Depending again on the market. Right? In the UK, for sure, with 3 stores in London, it's a very interesting option for us. And ship from store, obviously, is also in some more of the let's say sometimes it's just more beneficial to ship locally, right? Logistics wise, easier, duties and what have you. Imports, shipping costs, play a big impact, play a big role there. Yeah.
Great. And I think from when we chatted at Ecom Expo, your plan was to use native kind of features within Centra for that. As a business, like how are you going to manage the stock? Is it a case of that you plan to kind of pass all of your retail stock into Centra and kind of manage it all from that?
Yeah, I mean, that we have already, right? We have the stock. So the stores manage their stock, they own their stock, they have the stock master, and then we read that in Centra. Yeah, and we can then display that to the front end. So customers could look up, is an item in stock or not? Yeah, that's also a feature, an Omni feature that is interesting for customers in the vicinity of a store, obviously. Yeah, but it's the case that the retail stores own their stock.
Yeah. One other topic that we briefly touched on the panel a couple of weeks ago was loyalty. And that's something that I feel like I've certainly been talking about on a daily basis, comes up on the podcast a lot, see it on LinkedIn a lot. A lot of brands are really trying to think about what a good loyalty program looks like, how they can maybe focus more on some of the services and benefits, and also kind of build that whole kind of experiential skin in the game, like a lot of those more psychological elements into a loyalty program rather than just, going down the points route or just making it purely transactional. So can you talk us through how you approach loyalty and how you have deployed that across both the online and offline channels?
Yeah, so exactly. So I think we see the same thing, right? There's a big, especially for our offering, timeless pieces, high quality that lasts long, but you like one color of the jumper, you may want another color. So we see a very good repurchase rate of our customers. And obviously we like to, obviously that's something, this is your existing customer base. They already have experience of product. If they're happy that, they come back, right? And enjoy more of your products. Then at some point, almost 2 years ago now, we decided to launch a loyalty program, still on Shopify. We launched it in the beginning. It was obviously, I think on a loyalty, the basic you need is the points and the rewards. Yeah. As you said, it's more about, it's more about, making your customers, ambassadors of the brand, right? So obviously we still have the points and the rewards. Now we use Voyado for loyalty. The nice thing now with C2 and Centra, we have one global loyalty system, one global loyalty program. So no matter in which store you buy, you collect, or in which store you redeem, if it's online, offline, different location, doesn't matter. And so we really want to have this omni-channel experience. It shouldn't break, cross stores, retail, e-commerce silos or anything like that. I think that's very important for us as a brand because we see our customers, they tend to travel a lot. If they go to New York, they like to see the store. If they don't live in the vicinity of a store, but, they may live in Germany or in the Netherlands or somewhere in the UK where they don't come to London very often. And like that, also the cities we have, obviously people tend to travel there every now and then. So I think that's a very important point for us. But I think that every brand needs to decide on their own, obviously. And we want also to go more in the direction of, not a transactional program, which I think we are a bit beyond that. People get gifts when they reach a tier. Now we started to sponsor some events. So then people get invites for those, which they usually like and appreciate. So kind of get more or invitation to an event in store, more on a personal level. You could think of giving them, priority access to products. We had an experiment there, which was very well perceived. So I think maybe at some point make more personalized products for them. I think to give them more a value add rather than a pure transactional program. I think that's what you distinguish because it's getting crowded with loyalty programs. So you need to stand out again, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the one that I always reference is Kith. I think they've done a really good job. So there's a lot of service benefits, but particularly what you were saying there around some of their, like, in my opinion, nicest products and some of the higher value collabs, you have to be in a certain tier to access those. And I think they've rolled that out really nicely. And another brand I think's done loyalty really well is Hugo Boss. So they've recently started adding some more, I guess, like, yeah, again, just very special reward benefits. So like one is receiptless returns. I think it was them that started offering Ubers in-store visit, stuff like that. Just a bit more uniqueness around it, I guess. Sub question. So you mentioned you've moved to Voyado for loyalty. We've certainly seen Voyado come up a lot, and I think a lot of people like that they've built loyalty into what is essentially a CRM solution. And I think that makes perfect sense given that a CRM houses so much customer data. How have you found working with Voyado compared to what I can assume, or what I would assume would be one of the kind of loyalty vendors in the Shopify ecosystem?
Look, I think it's different in a sense, right? Because it's basically we use Voyado as our CDP if you want, right? So all the customer data from the different channels lives in Voyado, which makes it obviously different than if you have as you said, right? If you have a separate provider for loyalty, you always need to communicate. I mean, they're integrated on Shopify, so that kind of works. You know, you have Klaviyo integration, so you can still use the and what have you. So that all works. But I think having it on one, especially, you know, obviously for customer service, it makes life much, much easier because they can just look up the customer and everything relevant is there. On the other side, Voyado is obviously more of a, especially in the implementation and setup, they offer, I would say, quite a good service in helping to design and set up the program. And their support, we are very happy with their support as well. From that perspective, I think it's obviously you could argue, I'm maybe contradicting myself to what I said before with the best of breed, because I want the best of breed email and I want the best of breed comms and best of breed loyalty. But for us, this one is an example where it works extremely well together. It's kind of natural to have this together, right? To have the points and levels. And then obviously, you know, for the more personal things, you anyway need to manage that, not manually, but this never comes out of the box with any vendor. But then obviously having it in your email system or in your CRM, that obviously has huge benefits. Yeah.
Completely agree. And obviously then you can use some of the loyalty elements within like segmentation and everything else.
Correct.
So yeah, totally agree. And I think we'll see a lot more of that over the next few years anyway, in my view. So that makes sense. I'm going to move on to the final section. So roadmap. So it sounds like, I mean, you've obviously just gone through the build. I think you're pretty recent in terms of the launch. But Centra has a lot of, you know, really strong fashion-oriented native features. Are there any kind of any of these features that you're not using that you're going to prioritize rolling out now that you're live?
I mean, now one of the priorities for very soon is actually we use the picked as a recommendation and search engine. So to improve that one, to use it throughout, you know, to use the merchandising capabilities also throughout the category pages, the filters, etc., which currently are not using yet. I think that's one of the big steps, one of the big next steps that we want to go. Then we have started using bundles. That's one of the things we can explore more. Yeah. Because we have this, you know, shop by look on the website, so you can think of doing bundles there. Obviously also on the roadmap then for next year is start a very systematic A/B testing, right, to optimize what we have. So it's a combination. Again, we want to innovate constantly. That's very important, and I think with this setup, it's very much doable. And at some point, obviously, we also need to optimize what we have. Yeah. So
yeah,
like the very classic, basically grinding work, right? So this is very important, right? To make it basically always from a customer point of view, right? To make it as easy as possible to find what the customer wants, and then make it as easy as possible to buy, and then obviously make it as easy as possible to receive, and also to return, or exchange if you want to do that. Ideally, customers are super happy with the product, but sometimes the fit doesn't work or the color is different. They want to exchange, they want to refund. That's part of the e-commerce game, right?
Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense. And Depict's a tool as well that we've seen a lot recently amongst our clients, and I've been impressed with them for quite a long time. So that makes sense. And beyond the kind of Centra features and functionality that you're not currently using, is there anything else in your roadmap as a business from a digital perspective, or not even necessarily a digital perspective, but anything else that you're planning on focusing on over the next kind of 12 months?
Yeah, I think one of the things we touched upon before, right, is the whole, improve the omni-channel experience. And that comes on several angles. One is obviously the logistics part, right, to make it for the customer to have the item wherever they want it, ideally, to leverage the stores also as a warehouse, etc. So that's one of the more on the obviously on the digital side, but more on the back of house. On the other side, obviously the omnichannel experience comes a lot with communication, right? Now we have all the data in one system, segment, automations, to send maybe less of the one size fits all and more of the, okay, let's send something about a store. Okay, we segment, right? Or is that relevant for customers that only buy in store? Is that relevant for customers that mostly buy online? To also cross-fertilize the channels, push people from store to online, vice versa, to really give this impression to make the customer feel, okay, it's no matter which point I go, I have the same experience, right? Which is not always possible, especially in store. You have experiences very difficult to have online, right? But I think that's so the omni-channel is one of the key focuses from a customer point of view.
That makes sense. Great. And yes, that's all the questions I had. Really appreciate you coming on, Philipp. As I mentioned at the start, I'm a big fan of Luca Faloni, and I feel like I'm seeing you everywhere at the moment. I really enjoyed chatting to you and the Ecom Expo as well. If anyone wants to get hold of you to kind of ask questions, or any other kind of brands that want to ask about how you've approached different things with any of the technologies we've talked about, how could they get hold of you?
I mean, they just send a LinkedIn message. Email is sometimes a bit difficult to get through. So I guess sending
tell me about
a message via LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. Yeah.
Perfect. Brilliant. Well, yeah, like I say, I really appreciate you coming on, and thanks everyone for listening. As always, we really appreciate you sharing this episode and following us across the various channels. And then James and I will be back next week. So yeah, thanks everyone.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast, hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.